Welcome to Open Pulpit, the greatest podcast on this side of the Jordan. The church may be closed, but the pulpit is still open. Yes. On today's episode, we will be discussing the topic of Black love with two very special guests. My name is Maya Minter.
I'm Amethyst Rose.
And I'm Imani Abernathy.
And we are Open Pulpit. But we are going to be discussing what brings us together, what pulls us apart, and what it takes to maintain a successful marriage in 2023. Today, we welcome in two very special guests that definitely beat the odds and are a true testament that Black love is possible. We have Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III, who serves as senior pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ here in Chicago, Illinois. Along with him is the beautiful First Lady Monica Moss, whose early career education and administration has evolved into dedicated service to food and advocacy and community resource development. We are so honored that you all are here with us today. And honestly, it's kind of weird talking about Black love with them because they've known me since I was in diapers, but we're about to have a great conversation. So thank you so much for being with us here today. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having us.
This is exciting.
We're your inaugural interview, right?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. And
we're a beta test.
Yeah, and the space is so beautiful, and you all look so professional over there, and love is in the air. It's all beautiful.
Yes.
But before we get started, how do we feel about Black love? I feel like there is still a possibility out there. But I was lamenting on the statistics of African Americans are the least married of any major racial or ethnic group. Mm-hmm. We have the statistics of African Americans coming at 30%, Hispanics coming at 43%, we have whites at 52%, and lastly, we have Asians at 58%. So how do we feel about that?
Yeah, I'm feeling, I've kind of questioned it sometimes, but I'm still excited about the possibility. But, I have been also thinking about some of the statistics also. In 2020, only 30% of African Americans were married, compared to 48% of all Americans. Half, or 50% of African Americans have never been married, compared to 34% of all Americans, which I find super interesting.
I do as well, but I'm happy that we have a great representation here. And so what we're going to do is, before the show started, we asked you both a few questions to see who know each other better.
All right.
So we're going to have First Lady Moss go first.
Okay, put me in the hot seat. Let's go. Let's go.
All right. So we did ask these few questions. So we're going to ask...
We're gonna ask First Lady Moss what she thinks that Pastor Moss questions would be.
Yes.
And then we'll do it vice versa.
Got it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with First Lady Moss. So, what is your husband's favorite food?
Okay, so this is pretty simple because it's all things seafood. But he loves to try different types of restaurants. So he loves Indian and Mediterranean food and Asian food. So what I'd say is like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
You're getting our personalities here.
I know him very well.
You've given us a lot of answers. So,
Okay, seafood.
final answer.
Final answer.
That was correct. That was correct. Yes.
All right, next question. What is your husband's favorite place to travel?
He loves international travel. And I would say, of all the trips we've taken, Ethiopia. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
2 out of 3.
All right.
Pastor Moss, hope you get these answers. She's showing out right now.
Yes.
All right, final question. What is the one material object that your husband could not live without?
Hands down, books. He cannot live without his books. And I would put the Bible at the top of that stack. Bumps. Yes. Yes.
Must be a match made in heaven. I got all 3 right. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
I'm in trouble.
Pastor Moss, it is now
Okay.
your turn. So what is Mrs. Moss, First Lady Moss, favorite food?
I said that anything that her grandmother would make, that the food, there's a memory with her grandmother's food, and it's connected to her grandma.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, that is incorrect. Would you like to share what your other right answer was?
So I will tell you that he's almost correct, and it's. I said all things vegetables. You know how, and Grandma,
that's true.
she always cooked really amazing vegetables. And I know that sounds boring, and I know I'm talking a lot, but it's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. Yeah. So it was, anything like, I love good vegetables.
I know, but it has to be grandma's though. The
Yeah,
way you talk about grandma's.
Grandma's kale, grandma's
Yes.
butter beans. Yes.
Okay, you got that right.
Oh, we'll give him half of a point.
I got a half point. Y'all are teachers. Like,
Half a point.
I got a half point. Okay.
And so, what is her favorite place to travel?
Well, the magical place to travel was when we went to Ethiopia, but she absolutely loves anything dealing with water, like the beach. But Ethiopia was the spot.
Would you like to give your answer?
Okay. I agree with him. But what I did say was Virginia. I would say,
I see. Yeah, but now Virginia is different now.
It is very different.
Yeah,
so,
because everybody's
but
passed
Ethiopia was just like a once in a lifetime trip. So I would say we can give him another 3/4 of a point this time.
I mean, but the motherland is home as well.
You said home.
Now
so
you get 1 full point. Okay, you have a point, but now we got
And you
her
did say you
forward.
love the international trips. So
you
technically, you good. You still
Thank you. I listen. But she's got you see she has multiple layers. She has layers.
We're gonna get into that.
We're gonna get into all
Last question. What is one thing that First Lady Moss could not live without?
Now, I got this right and wrong at the same time. Watch. So watch, listen. These I said now. There are 2 things that happen that she can't live without. Is a call from her mother and a call from Gia. Those 2 things are she's deeply connected with. Am I right?
Well,
See, layers.
he is somewhat right.
Yeah.
Because it's not. Well, I didn't say those specific calls, but I did say I can't live without my telephone.
So you're like,
Okay.
but
But it's those 2 calls that are extremely important.
We're just gonna say that you both aced that.
Come on.
Y'all were
Playing
there.
with us. It was such a great pleasure to get to know you a little bit better. Now we're going to move into our questions.
The real question.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Real deal. And this is geared towards the love that you have for each other. Now, as I said before the show started, if there's any question that you don't want to answer, that is fully okay with us. So we're going to start off with Imani.
Yeah, so the first question we have is, it's a 3-part question. So what is your love story? How did you meet? Was it love at first sight? We'd really love to get your perspective on that question. Questions.
This is an interesting question because we've answered this question many times over the years, but we have officially gotten to this place now where we're old enough that the perspective changes. Okay. So, we met freshman year, but it wasn't just freshman year of college. He was at Morehouse and I was at Spelman. It was, HBCU. But it was freshman week.
No, it wasn't freshman week.
Hey, what? What do you mean?
No, freshman week was over. Because by the time we got to the friendship,
is true.
freshman week was over.
So, but it was still early.
It was September.
Yeah, it was September.
Yeah.
So, but he was speaking. He was every year they had an oratorical contest, and he was representing Morehouse, and one of my girls was representing Spelman. And so she spoke first, and we were cheering, and then they introduced this tall, skinny guy who came walking up the aisle. And I remember looking and seeing him walking up the aisle. So yes, we did meet in church, yes. But it was just something about him. My heart was like, oh my gosh, who is this person? And it wasn't, I thought he was cute and everything, but it was something, I was like, wow, I just felt something special. So he spoke, and then I'd never heard a young person speak like that. And he did a really good job. And so afterward, there were a group of us. We all went up and introduced ourselves to him. And I told him my name, and I told him where I lived on campus. And
she was the only person I remembered out of all the young ladies. And so I remembered the room, remember where she was. And it was 215 LLC.
Yeah, that's where I lived.
Never saw her after that, though. Yeah.
But you went home that afternoon, and you told your roommate.
I told my roommate Ed, I said, I think I found my wife. And
And it was
never
really,
saw her after that.
and he didn't. You did see me eventually, but it was September, and there was a young lady at Spelman who always talked about this guy named Otis, but there were a couple of Otises in the freshman class, and so yeah, that's what I laughed about. I'm like, why are you naming your son Otis? That's a whole
Yeah, I know, it's like an old black man's name, you
old
know.
black man's name. You got Otis and Rufus, and But anyway, so she would always talk about this guy Otis, and you didn't want to get labeled by sneaking over and being over at Morehouse. So I wasn't really willing to go over there. You could do group things, and I don't know if it's probably very different now, but anyway, so one night the Alphas were crossing. They were finishing their pledging period, and
The bricks.
they had their bricks, and
One more step
toward the light. Lord help me through the night. 85. And anyway, so I saw Dion. Oops, cut that. I saw this young lady talking to this guy, and I thought it was so cute, but I didn't recognize it was the same person. I said, "Who is that?" She said, "That's Otis." And I said, "Oh my goodness!" And it still didn't. I didn't make the connection that was the same guy from church. I don't know what I was thinking, but he said, so I said, "Introduce me, Dion." Oops. And she said,
No, you said you came
"Oh
walking
yeah."
over.
I walked over, and she said, "This is Monica," and you said,
I've been looking for you.
he said, I said, "What?" I said, "You've been looking for me." But he was kind of shy, so he wasn't willing to just come over and visit me. You may have forgotten where I lived, too.
215.
But anyway, so after that, we have pretty much been together since then.
Since that moment.
Since then, that was September. No, that was like
March was
November.
like November. That was like November.
Of 1988. Were any of you born in that? No,
No, you weren't even around.
Not even an inkling in anybody's eyes. Yeah. So.
Still in the spirit.
I was gonna say 93.
And what's crazy is that doesn't even feel like it was that long ago.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so it was love at first.
Oh, it was definitely something.
Yeah.
It was something special there, and I remember going back and saying, it's something about the way I felt in his presence. It was a kind of a calming feeling, and so I would say maybe not quite love, but definitely like, whoa, my heart was moved.
It was definitely attraction for sure.
Yeah, it was attraction for sure, but it was like something I had never felt before.
Okay, well, since we're on the lines of feelings, for both of you, I would love to get your definition on what love is to you. And since you guys have had this opportunity to spend so much time with each other, can you tell us a little bit of how that has progressed? Since you said that it's not love at first sight, what was the moment where you identified that this was love, and then how has that grown between you two?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
That
And
is.
we were only 18 years old.
Yep.
And I think that we were two, and this is something we've never really talked about before, but we were two young people who were coming out of kind of a tumultuous experiences. So I'll talk about mine. You want to talk about yours a little bit?
Yeah.
So I grew up, my parents were really young when they had me, and looking back on it now, they were both growing up. And so I grew up in a household that was, it was very stressful to me. It was a lot of rage and a lot of, at times it was, walking on eggshells and not quite realizing how that anger that was always in the air, how it impacted me. I'm the oldest child. I have two younger brothers. I felt very protective of them. I felt very protective of my mother. And it was just it was hard for me as a young person. So I was bringing that into this little 18-year-old package. And then you were...
Then I was coming out of a situation where my sister had just had her second or maybe third kind of mental break. So my family was trying to deal with someone who was so chaotic and focusing on hospitalizing her. And so Monica was the first person that I could really be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
and say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on in my life. Because I couldn't share it with any of my boys. Everybody knew what was going on. I mean, but it wasn't anybody I could talk with. And she was the first person that I could actually say, this is what's going on in my life. And I'd never had the opportunity to be vulnerable with anybody in that manner.
And what I didn't, and this, I would say the same thing. He was the first person I could feel like, let me share this vulnerability with you about myself, because I was a high achiever. I was,
Oh, Lord.
I was always going to be the student, whatever, who was selected. And so even going to Spelman, I knew I had to have the grades to get to Spelman, because that was the only way I was going to get there. So
She was a NASA scholar at Spelman.
I was a NASA scholar, and but it was interesting looking back as we tell this story now, that we never really kind of synergized, is that we were two young people who did trust each other pretty quickly, and then very quickly realized that there was this feeling of this love, and it was a responsible feeling for one another. We were invested in each other's success as students, but we also quickly kind of bonded over taking care of one another in a unique way. I think that maybe doesn't happen when you're have less of a burden.
That's
I would
true.
say.
Yeah, we held each other's vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
In a very special way, cared for them, and she had someone that she could speak about the challenges in her home life that she'd never had, and especially someone who was male. So all of her mentors were women. And then here's the first time that she had a guy that she could just talk with and say, this is what's going on with me. This is what's going on with my life. That was rare.
And then to have that part of that romantic attraction, and that whole, like I'm falling in love with this person, and to be able to trust that as a young person was very interesting. And here's another thing that ended up happening. We had this crew we called the Posse, and so it was my friends and his friends, and we kind of melded together, and we ended up like there was a lot of accountability around our relationship. So it wasn't like if he tried to cheat on me, I was going to find out. And it was vice versa. We were going to find out about what each other was doing. And our friends were invested in the success of our relationship. And it's so funny because...
And other people were invested.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah. So...
You all have the, love and basketball, black love story that everybody wanted. So, of course...
And didn't even know it was happening.
Yeah.
Didn't even realize, what was really happening. And sometimes, especially being a couple in ministry... I've oftentimes thought, why did we get together so early in life? Why have we been together so long? And I think that it kind of had to happen that way because of the trajectory that God was going to put us on. So.
And then do you just the last part of my question? And how did this foundation of love and understanding prepare you guys for loving your kids and housing?
Wow.
Coming from such,
Yeah.
I don't want to say trauma-based, but challenging backgrounds and putting it into that.
So even though we both came from chaotic situations, we had real stable people in our lives. So grandparents and the extended village, aunts and uncles, cousins. We had these people who demonstrated and represented that there's that opportunity to be stable. But as we evolved in this love, and it has been an evolution for sure.
Yes, yeah.
There were a lot of things we had to come to understand, and this will lead to what you said about being
come
parents.
To learn,
Yeah, we had to acceptance. So this lady taught me one time, because I do collect women who have been my mentors.
She really does.
Love is acceptance, and acceptance is love. And it takes a long time for you to get wise enough to realize that you're not going to be able to change anybody. Yeah. Spouses, children, they are who they are, and it's intentional that they are who they are. But you have to be able to accept them for that. And I would think that I have, and I am in no way an expert at this, and Michaela would especially tell you acceptance, but it is this idea of trying to see that person for who they are. And you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to have expectations. Like, one of my big expectations was that when I got married, I thought men were supposed to fix stuff. I said household. My
Her
daddy was
dad
not calling
was
anybody.
Mr. Fix It. So he's fixed everything. That's what, and her dad was a NASA engineer.
Right.
That's what he did. My father was a preacher. My dad was like, call somebody. For somebody to fix it. And I was like, well, call somebody. They'll fix it. And I was like, what?
No, we don't call
We
anybody.
have to fix it. I was like, I'm
We're
not
going
going to
to Lowe's.
break it.
We're going to Home
I'll
Depot.
break it. It's like, I'm not doing that. Get it fixed.
Get the masking tape.
Yeah.
Or get the duct tape.
Get the duct tape.
But I'll tell you this one thing though. Once I learned to accept that about you, things just started to change, and I would say that that's this evolution of this love has I think it was because of the way we started in this relationship.
And the beauty of balance. I mean, I think that the two of us balance each other in a way that's really amazing. So Monica's energy is like, especially with the kids when they're young, okay, we're going to do this. This is the way it has to happen. And if something were to happen, she's like, oh my goodness, what's wrong? I'm like, it's okay. It's good. We're fine. There's another lesson in it. And so there was a really cool balance that they always understood.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a fire, I'm like, it's a fire. It's a fire. Okay, we'll figure it out.
No.
Monica's like, no, it's a fire. It's a fire.
We deserve to freak out. It's a fire. Freak out.
I'm like, yeah, it's a fire.
Yeah.
But going along with that, you guys said that you kind of thought about how did you get together so young? What were you looking for when you first met each other? Like, you were so young, so you probably may have not thought about it. Maybe you did, but were you each other's? If you think about like who you are as a person now or over that evolution, like what were you exactly looking for, and have you felt that you've gotten those things like checked off per se?
Yeah, like how you thought that you would have like a handyman-y husband, and that wasn't the case. Well, I'm not gonna say that.
He's like,
might
not
put
me.
something together, maybe something. But were those standards met, or?
So one thing I would say is we always we didn't always have the language to articulate when you're so young. I wanted a cute guy. I knew I wanted it. But I also wanted a value-centered person. And there were certain things like, I don't even know if I'd always grown up in church, but I don't think I was like, oh, he has to, go to this type of church. Or
she was an Episcopalian.
I was Episcopalian, so.
I mean, the first time she went to my father's church, my church I grew up, she was like, why are the people so loud? What? They're talking back and the choir is swaying. And
But what were you looking for? Or were you looking for anything?
Well, I think at first it was just so much like, I thought you were fine. So I was just like, on what, but then again, someone who's rooted. I mean, the moral compass that you had was just so clear. This wasn't clout. This is who I am. I believe in these things.
Yeah.
I treat people a certain way. I'm compassionate. I believe in God, and I'm funny. And
we did have a lot. We always laughed.
We
a lot
talked and just laughed.
But I'll tell you one thing I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to feel safe.
Mm.
I really, really needed to feel safe, and I needed somebody who I liked the way I felt around you. I think you remember me telling you that.
You did.
I needed someplace where I could be calm, because I didn't grow up calm, and I didn't even really know what I needed. Yeah. But you asked there was a second part of that. So you were saying as time has moved on, have we lived up to each other's expectations? Yes and no. And I think the one thing that has made us cohesive is that we've always had similar values. Yeah. Another thing that happened that's kind of unique is not only did we bond as a couple, but our families are friends now. Yeah. So that was also a really good thing that happened. But I think at times it hasn't always been easy. There was a time when we were going to go our different ways, but it was the values that kept bringing us back together.
And that was a centerpiece. But when you just reminded me of something when you talked about what you needed. I've never thought about that I needed consistency
Mm.
because I was very close to my sister, but she was completely erratic. One day she was operating this way. The next day she's talking out of her mind. And I needed someone who was so very consistent, and you were just consistent. There was no wavering
Yeah, I don't waver very much. Yeah.
at all. No, you don't.
Yeah.
She likes her vegetables.
That's right. That's right. She don't waver.
But I take so seriously, like, these relationships, whether it's with him or the kids or people. You know, I'm real serious about, like, I guess it is being consistent with people.
Yeah.
And I remember I felt like I don't think it was a heavy load or a burden, but I felt that there was something so heavy on you, because at first he didn't want to tell me that his sister had a mental illness. And it took many, many years, like 17 years, for you to even really
work through that.
To be able to say my sister,
Committed suicide.
Committed suicide.
Can you share a little bit about why, that was a hard thing for you to do, to share something with someone that you have spent so much time with?
Yeah.
Because I think that
because I think that vulnerability in relationships is just something that's super hard that isn't necessarily,
especially for males.
Yeah.
In the Black community.
It really is. And so being vulnerable about something, one, at that time period, that people didn't really understand. So my parents were very good at saying, that your sister is ill. They were always framing it within the medical piece. But you're getting all this other information that she's crazy. It's a demon. All this just wild stuff, and you don't know where to put it. And you can't, it's not like someone broke their leg, they have cancer, and you can just say X, Y, and Z. She's a paranoid schizophrenic, but she's the smartest one in the family. So here is the scholarship to Spelman. She is this amazing writer and poet. And the reason that I love, literature, the reason that I love jazz music, hip hop, it comes from my sister, and there was a big age difference between us. And so Friday night, I hung with my sister. And I didn't think it was strange, but I realized that she didn't have a whole lot of friends. So she would take me out to the movie. We'd go get ice cream and so we developed this relationship, and, she's kind of the babysitter and whatnot. And then she had this break, and that relationship changed. And I'm in college, and that relationship has changed, and she's now on medication, and you can't talk with her. It's not the same. You met her one time, that time you met her.
I met her I think I met her twice. And and then there's a word you didn't use, but I'll push this a little bit. And I think that it was shame.
Yeah.
There was there's a stigma, So I remember on one of our first dates. Let me tell you the first date. That's hilarious. But let me finish that thought.
That's a great first date. Now, all these people trying to do these major dates. We had the best first date in the West End of Atlanta. West End of Atlanta, in the straight hood. And where do we go?
Popeyes.
Come on now. What are we talking about?
Let me tell you something that's interesting, because
I got dressed up.
He got dressed. His friends dressed him.
Yeah.
Y'all better
I had no tired.
Y'all better be listening to this.
I was flyer going to Popeyes.
People need to listen, because I didn't there was this idea of, like, he has to take me a certain place, and I could have cared less where we went. I was so interested in just going with him.
Yeah.
And so that was our official first date. And listen to this.
Yeah,
we walked.
We walked. That's right.
To the Popeyes.
I had no car.
Is it the same Popeyes that's still there?
Yes.
It's from all 30 some years ago.
You know what I'm talking about?
Same Popeyes is there.
Yes.
I know
That
Popeyes
one.
you're talking about.
Yes.
They dropped my fries.
We talked the whole way, and I didn't have any clothes, so the whole thing was I'm borrowing from my friends. I said, "Hey man, can I borrow?"
Yeah, he looked so cute.
I had a little kufi on. I was being Afrocentric. I wish we did.
Oh, man.
Think about, we would have had to have had a camera back then, right?
That costs money.
Our spiritual imagination.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right. Talked the whole way to Popeyes.
But let me tell you this. So that was like our official first time we ever got together. And we walked, and it started to rain a little bit. And it was just a great time.
say, wow.
It was, yeah. But the first time he took me someplace, we went to the Marriott Hotel's restaurant. Now, listen to this. So here we are, young people. This is now probably 1989. It's like
Yeah, it was 89.
early in 89, January, February.
Mhm.
He goes, we went and we had dinner, and he said, my dad is in town. Now, I didn't know. So I didn't know about the Otis Mosses or anything. He didn't even factor. It was just his daddy at that point. And so, I mean, some girls had told me, you know what, you need to hold on to him. And I was like, what do you mean hold on to him? What does that mean? I'm like, I like him. I don't even know what you're talking about. So he said, my dad's in town. He's staying at this hotel. Would you like to meet him? Now think about, I remember I felt safe with him. Now imagine like nowadays if some guy just say, you want to go up to a hotel room? Anything could have been waiting. Anything could have been waiting. But what was waiting was my future father-in-law. And so he knew he wanted to introduce me to his dad, which meant so much looking back on that because you know.
Pop like Monica.
Yeah.
So, you know.
He was such a nice, it was just such a nice thing. And my family liked him. So it really was kind of old fashioned and we courted in many ways because there was so much family involvement. And my little brothers loved him. So
yeah, we bonded real quick.
Yeah.
And then your grandmother,
and grandma
we bonded,
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to sit down with the grandma and say, I really, I like your granddaughter. I had to do the whole thing of just having the conversation with.
He did?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
My dad said, what are your intentions?
Yeah. Her father said, what are your intentions with my daughter?
And I was like, because
I asked in front of you.
Yes.
That's how you have to do it.
Yeah, that's how you gotta roll.
So nerve-wracking.
Yeah, you gotta do that. That's the way you gotta roll. I mean,
But
that's what the father's supposed to do.
I would have to say that is a very Southern way.
Yeah.
Yes.
To do things. It's
Yeah.
very debutante style.
We want that.
Court the young lady, give it some time, show the grandparents and the parents, have that questionnaire to really see, okay, what are they going to do on the
Right.
question?
Right.
How are they going to be? And since you guys have said that your mentors were your family members and people with more experience than you, they would, give them the real deal of like, okay, this ain't the person for you, or
Yes.
So since you are such a lovely lady, and I love your energy,
Aww.
First Lady, we're gonna kind of combine these two questions.
So we want to know who specifically is First Lady Monica Moss. So who exactly are you, and what is it like to be married to someone who is in such high demand? And because you talked about like the fear that well, not even the fear because you didn't really understand when you're meeting his father and everything, but I guess in today's today's reflection with his status and all of that. So how does that make you feel?
Yeah. So who am I? I am I'm the product of a lot of women folk. A lot of women have fed into me. The men that have been in my life have been important, extremely important, but it's the women. I'm a woman's woman, I'm a product of that. And I would say I'm a servant. I believe in serving others. I'm a mom. I really, let me see. I don't know if I'd say I'm a mothering kind of spirit. I have like a mother spirit. And I'm an encourager. I love fiercely, and I'm very loyal. Yeah, I'm super loyal.
She is truly ride or die.
Yeah,
real.
I'm super loyal.
For real.
But a lot of times people don't realize about me, and it is because I kind of live in this world where you have to have a kind of a persona as a first lady, whatever that is, I love to have fun. I love to laugh. And I would say, again, going back to we were so young when we got together. I see how shaped my life has been around my husband, who has been, he's the most important person to me in my life. And so how does that translate to this life that we live? It has been a struggle for me, honestly, because for him, he grew up with a dad who was like the person.
Yeah.
had a name. I grew up, my love language is time spent together. So we have had some battle royales because he's so outwardly facing. You know, there's so many things. I can remember when we were young in marriage and in ministry. I say, you know, why can't we go out? He's like, well, so and so died. I'm like, and you know, let's go. We said we're gonna go do something, you know. So it was hard for me for a long time, and I don't. And here's the other thing: we always talk about like I don't know who that person is. Like when you talk about the person who's in the man, he's still that young man who I fell in love with, and yeah, I understand he has responsibilities and maybe he has a name and you know that kind of thing, but it's not like I don't know that I just he's my husband, and so I will pull rank when I need to and be like no you have to do this type of thing with the kids or with me, or you know I'm proud of him. I'm super proud of him, and it's been amazing to watch this journey because it was not. He was 18 years old when I met him. Yeah. And it's so funny because like when he first became a minister, he had like 3 sermons. And
she's like, you've
I
been bringing on the Giants for
bring
too
on
long.
the Giants.
That was my sermon. It's like,
yeah, and I could do any of those.
she could do the whole sermon. She's like, here
right
we
now,
go.
I could preach the
Bring
whole
on the
sermon, 'cause I heard him
Giants. And
over
David
and
had,
over.
she knew the whole thing. She'd be back there in the back mouthing stuff. No, exactly.
That's a good idea. Would you actually preach a sermon for Trinity?
Ooh, you know what? I've never felt called in that direction.
Okay.
I feel like I'm called into ministry, but I don't know if I'm called into a preaching ministry.
Yeah.
I think really truly like my who you ask who I am. I'm a servant. I believe in serving people. You know, through the work that I do in community. But yeah. So I would say that it is kind of a weird kind of thing to have somebody who belongs to more than your own relationship. And I've had to learn how to be much more graceful in the truest sense of the word grace over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched on love languages. Do you know what your love language is?
It would probably be feedback, affirmation. I need to know. I think most preachers in many ways are also insecure, like, oh, we're not doing this right. You know, they may outwardly face as if, oh, things are cool, but they need to hear, no, you did do a good job. It is all right. And
That did sound right.
yeah, I didn't mess up, you know, and and I take things to heart. You know, if I feel like I stumble or I make a mistake, I'm like, oh man, you know, I take it to heart in a big way.
Yeah.
What about you, First Lady?
My love language. So my love language is time. You know, I really, you got to spend time. It's never going to be stuff.
Yeah.
I could care less. And that's another thing. I don't think I'm a typical first lady because look, I have on cowboy boots and my nails aren't done. And you know, I'm not that girl. You know, that woman.
She ain't. It's like you need to see her at home. She's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
In this, do you, and in this time of finding your grace,
Mm-hmm.
and in this time of growing your empire, do you guys feel like you have a handle on being individual, or do you still find that it's a spontaneous learning progress?
Yeah, because I know codependency and everything is super big and something that a lot of people struggle with, and just making sure that they keep their own individual self-image together when they're in these relationships. Because a lot of times you can get in these relationships and be like, okay, I'm so focused on my significant other that I don't even know who I am anymore. So it's just like, how do you maintain that individuality, especially with a lot of outside people probably telling you like what you should look like and who you should be, and trying to maintain that?
It's a great question. So you want to start the answer?
Yeah. You know, I think from my framework, it is dealing with the idea of ministry that there's this frame that people always want to put you in, this box, that you got to operate this way, act this way. And the other thing is I've never had very many minister friends. I have associates. I have the crew I grew up with. You know, that's my crew. And I have ministry associates and people I've got relationships with, but there's so much that the minister is supposed to operate this way. And I struggled for quite some time saying, I don't fit in this mold. I don't fit quite in this mold. And Monica helped me to say, yeah, you can be you. You can nerd out on your comic books, and at the same time, you can also love your movies, and and you can write your poetry. You can do you don't have to fit into some guy wearing a certain kind of suit and a briefcase and talking about doc. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
And that took time just to figure that out, because ministry will try to box you into, you must operate this way.
Yeah.
And it's soul crushing to so many people. And my colleagues who I've seen who have these other gifts, but they're so terrified to be able to share with them these gifts, because they said, well, my church won't understand.
Yeah.
I can't. I'll get criticized, if I do that.
Yep. And you had to find your voice.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Who am I, and be courageous enough to say, I am this comic book guy, but I also love God. I do love preaching, but I also I want to talk about a movie and a sermon and all these different things, which was pretty unorthodox. But to be courageous enough to at least try. That's what he's taught me, is you've got to try. I grew up always being worried about failing. He grew up always learning it's worth a try. And so that's a paradoxical shift, because when you live afraid of making mistakes, then that becomes an issue, which really became my issue, and I didn't even know it was happening. So you ask, like, okay, how do you keep yourself? How do you know yourself? And I would say, if I were talking to anyone, especially a group of young women, it's so easy to lose that self. And I do not like sounding cliche about things, but it's so true. And I would say that being married to somebody who was very focused on growing, not necessarily clear about where that growth was taking him, but he knew he wanted to go somewhere, ambitious. And then I had been this ambitious person who, we started moving because of his career. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, what about me? I was supposed to be Spelman's College president. I was told that was my ambition. I wanted to go back to Spelman College and be a president one day. And then, I don't know, but then I became a mom. And then I had cancer. And then we moved to Chicago, and we were uprooted, and all these different things that I don't even know if I allowed myself to even have time to mourn. I'm like, wait a minute, you just said I have what? I'm like, wait a minute, it was just like go in life. And so I do think that I lost a sense of myself, and it has been a real journey of therapy and prayer and journaling. I look back at things I used to write in journals, and I'm like, oh, this poor person. I was really struggling. You ever done that? Look back and say, oh, I said that? Woo. But I would say that it's still unfolding, because we are now, how old are we? We're 52 years old now.
Oh, y'all look wonderful. I want to
even
know. Okay, after the show, write it down.
Those vegetables, see? But I would say that, I fully believe that there is a whole other iteration waiting to unfold. Yeah. I don't know what it will be, but it feels different. The nest is empty. Those little chippy chaps are out of the house.
Are y'all excited?
It is exciting. It's very exciting. It's real calm. It's real chill in the house now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Don't have to worry about someone coming home at.
No.
that was a big thing,
That
right?
was a major thing.
Because you can't sleep if they're not in the house. So, yes.
Okay, so you kind of touched on our last question before we end, but you did say a couple of things that jogged my ear, and you both can answer at your leisure. My first kind of mid question is, how do you think or tell me a little bit of your experience of the church receiving you as the first family, one. And then two, Pastor Moss, I want you to touch a little bit on taking care of First Lady as she went through that experience. And what did that feel like to have someone else closest to you that was a female in that type of situation? And then to wrap it up, both of you can answer as well. What would be your advice to young people who are either about to get married, engaged, or thinking about being in a relationship? And also, if specifically a married family that is looking to be the first family of a church.
Ooh, that's a whole nother podcast.
You know, if you don't remember, it's okay. We can remind you. But
we need a part 2. That's an entire podcast.
That's the entire podcast.
That is a podcast. That is an entire podcast right there.